are now moving on to Waldo. So Waldo is in the subtropical city of Durban, where he manages, or close to it at least, where he manages the Krantzkloof Nature Reserve. He's with KZN Wildlife with more than 30 years of conservation management experience. Waldo, we really look forward to now walk with you in your shoes as you practically manage these invasive species in your reserve.
Right. A lot that has already been said has got reference, and I'm gonna tie little strings back to what Navashni said, as well as what Nicholas has said. And I'll refer to those as we go. So, yeah, I'm going one step lower onto the ground, into the reserve, where we are actively managed and putting a strategic plan together to control invasive alien plants. So this is the kind of hands-on and how, as a single manager, I've got a ecological advice manager or assistant that is in our area, and they periodically kind of talk into our reserves and getting a lot of scientific information from them. But on the ground, it comes down to my office and my efforts to address this. Um, so so Navashni has talked named it lower level management plans, and that's exactly what it is. So this is the content page of Krantzkloof Nature Reserve Protected Area Integrated Management Plan. So one could see, and I'll go into the next one. The next slide will lean into that. Is we must know what's on your reserve. So you must know all the plants. You must really know the context of your reserve. Here in the management plan, there's a section specifically kind of allocated to that, and there's invasive species. So a species list, and I'll talk about it now, per management block and per management per the reserve. And then those lower level management plans are bedded into your guidelines and principles for management of a reserve. So you've got your legal compliance, your stakeholders, your across the boundaries, and then you've got your biodiversity resource conservation management via soil, and there it is, alien invasive species control. So it's part of your management plan, and then right here one can see your annual operational planner. Nicholas and Navashni has mentioned annual operational plans, and that's where you are going to employ your adaptive management, which the previous guys also mentioned. So I think it's one of the most effective tools that we still use on the ground. You look at what your management plan is saying, you look at what your annual plan of operations is saying, and you constantly adapt. It's such a changing environment. New and emergent alien species are coming into our protected areas all the time. Nicholas has talked about pathways. We have to understand pathways so very well. Dumping over the back fence line, it is an absolute reality. So definitely touch on that. Um, just a little bit about Krantzkloof Nature Reserve and having a look at Klip Riversberg Nature Reserve. There's definitely some similarities there. Also, a urban or semi-urban reserve. It's about 700 hectares. On the western side, there's a residential area of waterfall and forest hills and kloof itself. And on the eastern side, it's a rural communities. So a lot of open grasslands with cattle grazing and the complications that come with that. So Kranzkloof is broken up in management blocks, very similar to Kruger. It's just on a much smaller scale. And those blocks are identified very specifically with the altitude in mind as well as the vegetation in mind. So here one can clearly see, just move this away, that Your high-lying areas here is your grassland areas. Um, then you've got your, as it goes down below the cliff line, and I'll explain the cliff line just now. Here with us, it's a real boundary. You've got your forest areas and your low-lying areas, this yellow area, and then you've got your like a mixed bushveld on the sunny slopes, you're below the cliff line. So, having a brief look at the management plan again. So, your blocks are identified according to those big features. Now, that's important to understand, and your when you come to your what to know your reserve, to which species are going to be in which blocks are you going to put together so that they are complementing each other. So, your grassland blocks you're going to add together for other actions that we are going to, and management actions like fire to accommodate those. So we'll have a look at that as well. And then the seasonal kind of characteristics of some of your species. Some of them are flowering, and they are dotted all over the reserve. But so you're going to going to put those contracts together. So just to break down right in the middle here, I've got 6 different contracts of alien plant contractors that come in, and we've put the blocks together and the hectares and the man days it'll gonna take to do those. So and it'll all come together as we go through the presentation. A very good principle here, and I'll talk about it now. No, I'm going to just come back to the slide again. Is to prioritize in your management plan or your lower level plan for aliens is how it's going to roll out, how it's going to roll out through your season, how it's going to roll out in your reserve. So the principle here, uh, I- before I go to the one in this specific one, there's a principle that Nicholas talked about, which is the bigger the reserve, the less intense the management. And the opposite of that is the smaller the reserve, the more intensive the management. It is a principle that we've learned in my days when I did my BTech with Doc Ogilvy, and at TUT I was an ex-student there and or still a student there, and it's one of the principles that we were taught right from the beginning. Is your reserve smaller, you have to pay more attention and pay more attention to your pathways, your vectors, your blocks specifically. How you are going to put a plan together to make the resources available to you the most effective. So the principle in this reserve here is the furthest from the river, the highest and the furthest blocks you do first, and then you go down the river. So there one can understand the cliff line below and above the cliff line, specifically to us here in Krantzkloof. So there's grasslands obviously on the top areas there, that have got a very separate management to the forest, the valley bushveld at the bottom here. There's your river right at the bottom, and it's a very important pathway or where seeds or alien plants enter your reserve, and must be monitored very closely. So birds, for instance, and I know that Nicholas has mentioned pigeons. We've got a whole heap of birds that fly, and as they leave your forested area, they will, or your over your grassland area, they will sit in that ecotone. So that's where you go and look for your seeds and for your new growth, to make sure that you stay on top of your infestation. Um, right. Just need to move this block again. So here, putting an alien invasive management plan together. Know your reserve. It is the most important, I'm going to keep going back into it. Know your reserve. Know your species list per the reserve and per your management block, so that you can know what you need to holistically look at your reserve. And per block is how you're going to put your plan together so that they all dovetail. Maps. I love maps. I think you can't manage a reserve today if you do not have extensive maps. And the technology that is available to us today with regards to tools and digital and remote sensing. I've put a slide here of Earth Ranger. to plan and to monitor how you're going to roll out your management plan. Um, your infestation, as that beautiful map that Nicholas has used, where the heat map, they work brilliantly, and you can adjust that over time and see what your progress is, and if you are getting ahead of it, are you falling behind, and visually you can know where your hard work and your attention needs to be focused. Obviously, terrestrial and aquatic. We've got those both those species which we are looking at. Although a lot of your terrestrial species do use aquatic pathways to move around, as Nicholas also mentioned. Entry points, which is a back fence of the reserve. So one of the tools, yes, we know legislation, and I'm going to go to we know NEMBA, and as Nicholas mentioned, it is our friend. As much as it's our enemy, that we need to kind of get ahead of it, but it is our friend. I've got a very good relationship with Metro enforcement, law enforcement, and they do spot fines for illegal dumping, which is brilliant. So I literally take some photographs, get the guys in, I meet them there, they meet with the landowner, and they spot fine them for illegal dumping. Yes, we don't want to create enemies, but we also must be very, very firm. I've got WhatsApp groups around our reserves, which are burning WhatsApp groups, and information gets around. If and people know, I do little small little information sessions on WhatsApp, and as much as we don't like it, and there's another group, it is very, very effective. Information snippets on the danger of alien invasive species, how they get into the reserve, and the dangers of not only for the reserve, but obviously for neighbors to the reserve as well. And I talked about special tools. So here's a breakdown of some of the management blocks. One could see that that we use rivers. There's drainage lines. There's cracks in the cliff faces that we use to separate these, and for contractors to work very clearly in defined areas is very, very important. And obviously for me to go and investigate and inspect afterwards and see if the contracts are completed correctly. Monitoring, see if the problem is we are getting ahead, or are we still need to put extra effort in there. Right, now we know what's there. Now we look on what is the best way to remove it. So we've got manual removal, chemical removal, mechanical, and biocontrol. All these has been mentioned, and a lot of those are other run-of-the-mill information that we see and that we learn in manuals and we learn in class, and we can recognize those. What I'm going to do with some of the case studies that we are busy with in the back half of my talk is I'm going to talk at some of these things that we all know, but what we've learned over the years, which is that adaptive management and ideas thinking out of the box, and how if to make it more effective what we are doing. As I said, the things to remember is the top-down approach. The highest blocks furthest away from the reserve first. Long term, I can't agree more with what has been said before. Alien plants are here to stay. We are going to triage which ones are most threatening to our biodiversity, and spend most of the time on them, and then monitor the ones that are slow spreading and slow growing, and we can keep an eye on them. This species here is your Banskia species, your oak species that are from Australia, very slow moving, slow seeding. Same as the eucalyptus, we keep an eye on them, and then obviously the ones that are move quicker, that's the ones we want to look at. And we want to adapt our methodology so that it is most effective. It takes extremely long time to fine tune, up to 5 years to fine tune which methods are most effective. Biological control, we've heard a very, very, very hard lesson with biocontrol, and it's one of the ones I'll refer back to when I get to it. Quality of your team So we do constant on-site during the contract training. I've found with one of them, Formosa Lily, where the whole season gone past, and I realized that they pulled him out. And I said to them, didn't you dig the soils out? Didn't you dig the bulb out? I said, no, they didn't. What do you mean dig the boil out? So I didn't know about that. So a whole season we've lost because they got the wrong approach. And we had to train that entire team right from scratch to do the methodology correctly. Specialist teams, we've got specialist teams that focus on something like briskia, Barbados berry, and that's all they do because it is such a difficult species to deal with. Supervision, supervision. We cannot say that enough. We constantly, as a manager, to stay on your teams when they're in the field. Just suddenly arrive. Just see what they're busy with. Where are they busy with? Are they on track? Is your contractor aware of the latest chemical mixes and the tools available? So supervision is extremely important. Budget and lots of it. It's very expensive. Chemicals are very, very expensive. Equipment, one could buy the equipment and think you're going to have use it next season, and then half your equipment's not there, and you buy again, your sprays aren't working. It's it is a very, very expensive. And once to do the budget correctly, know what you're going to go down, what you let yourself in for if you start getting down into the outlay of the contract. Right. Now we know what we have, we know what we're going to do. Now we're going to implement. So things to remember here. Timing. Alien plant species in themselves have got a characteristic that you look at. What's your flowering timing for some of those plants? For Mosa lily, they only flower between back end of January, February, and early March. And you can only deal with them, you can only control them if you can see them. The flowers that come up in your grassland in any other time you can't see them, and you have to. We'll go. I'll show a slide how to deal with them. You cannot deal with them if you don't see them. So it's very important to get the season right. Some of them, there's a seed bed that form like black wattle. They've got a very, very deep seed bed. And you only want to deal with if once you've done your initial clearing and you want to now deplete that seed bed and you're going to use fire, your blocks that you're going to control must be must be dovetailing with your fire regime or your block burns in the reserve so that you can ignite and just get that you get this mass growth of the seed that you can because they ignite with fire. So you wanna do those blocks just after your burn. Ecotourism, obviously other ecotourism, you don't want to spray chemicals which got mist and there's a right next to your picnic site where there's a lot of visitors sitting. So your timing and how you put your plan together must take your seasons and climatic considerations into account. Logistics, as I said, transport and equipment. Your PPE is extremely important. You can't work with chemicals if you don't have the right face protection, gloves, and you only need one injury on duty where Oak chopped half his finger off to understand how important it is to have proper leather gloves to go into your contracts with those. Access points for staff. Some of our blocks in the bottom of the reserves is it takes an hour and a half to walk there before you even start working. So that 3 hours must be calculated into your day on those remote blocks before you go down. So here's a lot of access points so that you can get to your work area as quick as possible. Right. So here's some case studies of what we have talked about. Chromalina is one of the big problems that we had. We don't have traffic with us, Buffinium with us at the moment. Yeah, we're very grateful and pray that it never come here. But Chromalina is our big nemesis here in Krantzkloof Nature Reserve. So I've mentioned just now we've had a big learning curve with the biological control, and it takes a long time to establish. So I've had two blocks that I've set aside completely, block 13 mainly to set aside completely for as an epicenter for where this basilica fly must establish and get a good stronghold, and I was hoping it will then spread out from there. So right in the middle of the reserve, it takes you an hour to walk in with that box, and we've let I don't know how many thousands of these flies go, and you can see them sitting on the leaves there, and it was a fantastic day, and we loved it. And a season later, I went down there every now and again to have a look, and I haven't found one, not one. So we hope to see if they've got these nodes where they will maybe establish. If they do not establish, and it doesn't look like they have, I've lost an entire season working that block on Chromalina. And the danger in that is that we won. So 1 year behind is 3 years catch up because of the growth, the aggressive growth of this plant. So it is a bit of a gamble, and it is in a low line below the cliff, far below the cliff line, and right at the bottom of the reserve, which is a danger zone in any way. So it is worth the risk, but it might actually cost us in the long run if this doesn't come through over time. So it's so hard to hear to get from the scientists at Sadara or or Rhodes or your stock are coming from, how successful it is, and it takes a long time to settle in. And we hope to have a good report in some time from now. The other one is Kariba weed. We've got biological control. I think it's quite well known in the water bodies up in South Africa. Kariba weeds. It's an old weed. We did case studies on them when I was studying in the 90s, and yeah, it's settled in very well. Also, a fairly hard lesson. We've had a very good population established in a dam here in the center of the reserve. And then the floods in 2000 took the entire population, everything out. And we had to start from scratch. So, yeah, we couldn't foresee it. But on the other hand, all that biological control agents are now washed down into the Mgani River, where there is obviously a problem with Kariba weed as well. And hopefully they will get going down there. Sagittaria. It's not a well-known, as far as I understand. It's more well-known in Natal, and we've got a weevil that we've introduced, also from Sadara, and established very, very well. We could see the damage on the leaf and on the seed, and it's quite a hardy beetle. So it's one of our better examples. But the same flood, all the Sagittaria was washed down the river, and they get these little populations in the eddies downstream, and it seemed to have established and spread like we hope it would. So also a fairly good outcome there. Monitoring is important. We can never stop monitoring, and so to make sure that those are still the populations are healthy. This lady that's doing she's our scientist from Sadara. She comes every now and again. And our next visit's now at the end of July. We're going to go down and have a look and see if we can find some and see what the health of the population is. Tradescantia, wandering Jew, very, very, very aggressive growing a ground cover that we have here in the thick undergrowth in quite close to the reserve. It's important to note you do biological control. Mechanical doesn't really work, or manual, and no chemical. You can't use chemicals because this plant only appears in the first 5, 6, 7 meters of where the water line or on the river edge. So your chemical spill into rivers is too big. The chances of contamination into your water sources are just too big. So we can't use chemicals there. So we have got this rust fungus that we've now, in the beginning of the year, our first release was in December. And that's the result. These aren't my photographs, these two. This is stock footage of how it looks like. This is what we've done. You put your contaminated leaves, you stick them underneath upside down in a container, and you leave your containers upside down, and spores then kind of drifts down onto your alien plant. And so we've started trying to get in here in our precinct here at the station, to get a population of this growing so that we can then spread it from there into the reserve. So looked this morning and I can see one or two leaves that is showing some sign, but it's still a bit early, and you will have to see how the season, hopefully now going into spring and so on, we'll see much more of this when nice humid situation that they do like to thrive in. Mentioned, I think Nicholas mentioned also that once you've chosen the biological control, is to be careful and demarcate those areas very, very clearly because of follow-up of chemical and mechanical that could spoil these efforts on biologicals. And they are long term. So to leave those areas alone for a long time to make sure that it has the best chance to establish. Periskia, yeah, this is a very, very bad one as well. It's a vegetative growth form. And once you understand vegetative growth form, it is quite dangerous to do a not a good job. You have to really, really pay attention because your method can actually spread this plant. So most of these you actually leave intact. You don't touch that plant. You take the main stem and you cut it off on the ground and you put it into a plastic bottle with a chemical so that the system, the internal system of the plant actually take that chemical right to the last leaf. If you cut this with a kalemba or with a bush knife and you clump it on like they've done here, there's too many leaves that fall, and there's too many bits and pieces of the stem that falls, and you next year you come and all the vegetation around is just covered with it. So it is very, very careful how to go about this vegetative growth form. Another one that works very well is your Pinta species, your Queen of the Night species, to actually to not cut it down, to let that plant stand where it is, to puncture holes in the stem at the bottom, and inject your chemical inside and let it stand up and let the plant take it into the entire system. Formosa lily, this is that one I've referred to a bit earlier, where you can only deal with this plant in your in that small window in February and March. And tall, this grass here is almost shoulder height. So it's a tall plant and you can only see those flowers. So you must go to the stem of that plant. You must dig down into the ground. And the root is this, it's like a scaly garlic like bulb. And you have to dig out and take out every single one of those little bulbs. You have to take the stem out. You have to take the seed pod that forms. That's the seed pod. None of it can stay there, and it must be all carried in a black bag, must be carried out. It's a very intensive. But we have blocks that we've cleared, that we have no Formosa lily left anymore. And once you know there's a patrol that needs to go down to the bottom of the reserve somewhere in February and March, and you go, my staff now know how to do it. They've got a plastic bag in their backpack, and they've got a bush knife, and they just go and they take that plant out. It takes 5 minutes. And that kind of monitoring and ongoing effort, we will never stop because there's one plant, and they do come into the reserve again with other sources, so it will never stop. Wild ginger. Wild ginger is a rhizome, a very interesting growth form as well. And the most effective tool for removing of wild ginger is a good old garden fork. Also, it took us 2 seasons to get the gist of this thing, and because where I inspected, I know there's a specific area where they've cleared this plant, and you get there, and it's exactly the same plants in exactly the same place. And then we realized, but hang on a second, there's a problem here. If you do cut it off and you spray a chemical on it, it just kills the first bit, that first one or two, but the rest of the root's still there. Right, that last, if you leave that last one there, you can't see it anymore, but it'll grow. So then we changed our methodology, and you where that first one is, you put your garden fork in there and you start lifting it, and you keep going until you lift the last dead one out the ground. Usually they are on fairly sandy soils or in areas low lying right next to the reserve, a river, and they're fairly easy to actually take out. And in wet conditions, the small ones, you can see it's a very baby one. You can actually hand pull and the whole thing comes out. And we just hang them in the trees like this. It's very effective. One or two will fall down and you can just pick it up and carry on. So, but also very effective. You have to catch this early. Some of those big beds of rhizomes, once they've really get established, you have to dig up the whole thing, and it is an incredible big work. There are areas in the upper areas of the upstream from Krantzkloof where I don't know if they'll ever be able to catch to take it all out. You can drive a vehicle over that bed. It is so established and it is so thick that you won't be able to take it out. So it's important to catch this one and take the whole thing out every season. Bloodberry, manual control also took some time of hard lessons. You can't if you find it standing in the ground, and you can see there's some wandering dew that's on the ground all around it. So it's obviously in this area in the thick forest underneath next to the river. There's a whole lot of alien plants growing there, and we found this actually not even long ago, 2 seasons ago. And if you touch this plant, that red seed will fall off. So you can't hit it with a bush knife. The moment you hit it at the bottom, all the seeds jump off, and then you just spread the problem. So you approach this plant very carefully, almost leopard crawling towards it, and you spread a plastic bag underneath it. And I told my staff, they thought I was mad. And I took them in and I showed them, this is how you take this out. Put your plastic bag underneath it, and then hand pick every single red berry and put it in the black bag. And once you've got all your berries, you pick up the one on the black bag that you've missed, put them in and then you cut it down and you uproot it if you can, and you put it in a plastic bag and you carry the whole lot out. Very, very, very labor intensive, but that's the only way. Otherwise, you actually make it worse if your methodology is not correct. Sword fern, it's chemical and manual, because you have to get that little bulb that stays behind in the ground. So after the first 2 seasons where you've chemically sprayed this, you can pull it out, you can heap them up, but those little bulbs they tend to get going again if you don't be careful. And the chemical control is quite effective on them, and we've also been having very good successes on them. Semi and hardwood species. I'm just gonna brush up on these quickly. We still got some bugweed. I have noticed where we've got landslides and bugweed come in as your pioneer species, and they take over, and you think, oh, the end of the world. There's hundreds of them. You stay on them. When the forest comes back and it takes over your land again, your bugweed does disappear a little bit. Um, so and respond very well to a chemical control. Camphor, slow growing, and you can ring bark this and it'll actually go. Here's your Banskia, your bottle brush species. Also slow growing, hard, not so much of a seed bed as your black wattle. And yeah, black wattle is an old species, and there's a lot can be said about this species. Not too much today. Just an overview of a few others we are battling with. Mexican sunflower, lantana, pom pom. in up in Pretoria, in your Joburg, Gauteng area, pom is a massive problem at the moment, and you actually have to bag the seeds as well. So important to clear out everything that you recover from the field. Ageratum, same story. You have to bag it, take it out. Lollipop climber, brought in by the seeds, the monkeys. So there's a vector which obviously is very hard to control, and do spread a lot of alien species. Indian canna. That comes from the gardens over the back fence and into the reserve. So they could be a problem and have to be kept a close eye on. Right, the last slide, I just quickly wanted to show a bit of a thinking that we've had to kind of think out the box, and just going to show that adaptive management that is so important when you go looking at how to deal with management plans. Although this is not outright a alien species, but it is an invasive species, which is a major threat to grasslands and KZN specifically. Even in the Drakensberg, we've got very, very big problems with bracken fern. So what we've done, this is a fixed point photograph of the same area. Um, this is more than a meter high, so you couldn't walk through it, and it got very old and moribund. It was very, very hard. It comes up to my chest height. It was just wall to wall bracken. So first, what we've worked out, mechanical brush cut. Every 6 week, if you break it first, if you cut that top off, and it's also a rhizome, which is interesting to understand. If you cut the source of his nutrition, you cut off, and you do that every 6 weeks, you frustrate that rhizome. And if you got a big patch, you do it concentric circles from outside, and you just work closer to the in. It doesn't like being cut every 6 weeks. It just, you can see it struggles, and it gets easier and easier to just, they get thinner and thinner on the ground. Before we started cutting, we did a chemical foliar spray. Now, understanding, and this is again, know your plants you're dealing with. The leaf of a bracken fern has got a thin, waxy layer on it. So if you spray it on the top, that kind of chemical will just simply run off. So what we've done is they turn the nozzle upside down, so it doesn't spray down, it sprays up. So you put your extension of your sprayer underneath through the leaves, and now as you spray from the bottom up, and you spray onto the stomata of the leaf, and we went from a 10% success to a 95% success in literally one go, just because we changed the method. Same chemical, same sprayer, same time. We just spray from underneath the leaf, and we couldn't believe how effective it was. And then we got into the mechanical. We start cutting it off every 6 weeks, and then when it was really successful and your grazing start coming back, we introduced a few Dexter cows as an experiment, and they introduced some fertilization that's obviously coming with the cow, and the trampling effect on um, the the plant, the bracken that was left and is coming out. It's quite a soft plant where your natural felt vegetation is quite used to grazing with a hard hoof, and actually they do like that with your buffalo and your zebra, and so the felt can absorb that kind of pressure, where the bracken didn't appreciate that. It's actually coming from research out of Scotland, where they use Dexter cows to control bracken. So the answer for what we need to do might not actually be in our shores. So and obviously biological control shows that it's also from abroad. This example I've included just to give an idea. Let's think outside the box. We have to make plans which are effective, and constantly change our management so that we can get on top of this problem. That is it for me for now, and Johan, that's back to you if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Waldo. Waldo, I would like to ask you, you quite often mentioned know your reserve, and I think in scientific terms one can rephrase that to collect data. So, how do you organize that collection of data in your reserve? How does that physically happen to give the students a good, and then specifically in terms of alien invasive plants, how do you collect that data? How do you organize that process?
So we do have the scientific blitz where a lot of scientists come to reserve and they put a lot of effort in, and they list everything. They identify as much as they can, especially if it's a new area. Lots of our data come from those weekends that they come and have a look. Our naturalists, we've got volunteers and honorary officers. There's a lot of groups that are out there that are focused in on this type of thing. They come to the reserve, they spend time here, they see stuff which we do not see, and they share that knowledge. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Wood. He's from Rhodes University, and he came and he walked in the reserve. I couldn't believe the amount of knowledge that he just randomly dispensed. So. And then, so that's for new reserves or for new information. We're obviously very privileged to have databases that are very, very old, that has come from management plans and updated management plans over the years. Um, our GIS guys for our projects, alien plant projects, they do update alien species lists for reserves all the time. So it's a constant database that we have available, and when we new contracts are developed, or our annual contracts are developed, they lean heavily on databases that are updated all the time. I give feedback, so there's some new plants that I've now found in last season. I would speak to our project manager and said, "Listen, can you add these? I'll research the methodology so long." Um, our management plans are you've got 5 year or 10 year management plans, then you've got your reviews, and as your review come, all those species gets updated, a species list gets updated. So there are mechanisms built into management plans to make sure that they remain relevant. And again, adaptive management, that's is what it was. We keep on adapting and adding those to our current operations.
Thanks, Waldo. That's just clearly showing the value of those databases and management plans
Yeah.
over the long term.